Winston Leonard Spencer-Churchill was born on November 30, 1874 at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, England, to Lord Randolph Churchill and Jennie Jerome. Churchill's father was a British statesman and his mother an independent-minded New York socialite. He grew up in Dublin, Ireland, where his father was employed by his grandfather, the 7th Duke of Marlborough, John Spencer-Churchill. Right from an early age, young Churchill displayed the diplomatic traits of his parents. He was an independent and rebellious student. He was not particularly an erudite scholar in his first two schools. However, in April 1888, he began attending Harrow School, a boarding school near London, and joined the Harrow Rifle Corps, a path that prepared for military. Initially, it didn't seem the military was a good choice for Churchill. It took him 3 attempts to pass the exam for the British Royal Military College. However, once there, he performed well and graduated 20th in his class of 130. Although Churchill didn't have a close relationship with his parents, he adored them and was shaken when he got the news of his father's death. Churchill enjoyed a brief but eventful career in the British Army. In 1895, he joined the 4th Queen's Own Hussars and served in the Indian Northwest Frontier and the Sudan, where he saw action in the Battle of Omdurman in 1898. During his time in the army, Churchill wrote military reports for the Pioneer Mail and Daily Telegraph and 2 books on his war experiences: The Story of the Malaccan Field Force, 1898, and the River War, 1899. In 1899, Churchill left the army and got a job as a war correspondent in the Morning Post, a conservative daily newspaper. While reporting on the Boer War in South Africa, he was captured by the Boers during a scouting expedition. Churchill made headlines when he absconded from the grasp of the Boers, traveling almost 300 miles to Portuguese territory in Mozambique. Upon his return to Britain, he chronicled his experiences in the book London to Ladysmith via Pretoria, 1900. In 1900, Churchill followed his father's footsteps into politics and became a member of the British Parliament in the Conservative Party of Oldham, a town in Manchester. He also adopted his father's sense of independence, becoming a supporter of social reform. Churchill switched to the Liberal Party in 1904 based on his conviction that the Conservative Party was committed to social justice. He was soon elected a member of Parliament in 1908 and was appointed to the Prime Minister's cabinet as a president of the Board of Trade. As president of the Board of Trade, Churchill supported Councillor David Lloyd George in opposing the expansion of the British Navy. Churchill initiated several reforms for the prison systems, introduced the first minimum wage, and helped set labor exchanges and unemployment insurance. He also assisted in the passing of the People's Budget, which introduced taxes on the wealthy to pay for new social welfare programs. In 1908, Winston Churchill got married to Clementine Ogilvie Hosier. After a short engagement, the couple was blessed with 5 children together: Diana, Randolph, Sarah, Marigold, who died as a toddler of tonsillitis, and Mary. In 1911, Churchill was named First Lord of the Admiralty and helped modernize the British Navy, ordering that new warship be built with oil-fired instead of coal-fired engines. He was one of the first to support military aircraft and set up the Royal Navy Air Service. He was so passionate about aeronautics that he took flying lessons himself to understand firsthand its military potentials. Churchill also drafted a contentious piece of legislation to amend the Mental Deficiency Act of 1913, mandating sterilization of the feeble-minded. The bill was passed in both houses of Parliament. Churchill maintained his position as First Lord of the Admiralty through the start of the World War I, but resigned from the government towards the end of 1915. Thereafter, he joined the British Army, commanding a battalion of the Royal Scots Fusiliers on the Western Front and seeing action in no man's land. In 1917, he was appointed the Minister of Munitions for the final year of the war to oversee the production of tanks, airplanes, and munitions. From 1919 to 1922, Churchill held the post Minister of War and Air and Colonial Secretary under Prime Minister David Lloyd George. As Colonial Secretary, he was entangled in another controversy when he ordered air power to be used on rebellious Kurdish tribesmen in Iraq, a British territory. At one point, He was even suggested that poisonous gas be used to annihilate the rebellion, a proposal that was considered but never passed. Contentions in the Liberal Party led to the defeat of Churchill as a Member of Parliament in 1922, and he returned to the Conservative Party when he served as Chancellor of the Exchequer, returning Britain to the gold standard, and took hardline against the general labour strike that threatened to cripple the British economy. After defeating the Conservative government in 1929, Churchill left the government as he was perceived as an extremist out of touch with the people. After he left the government, Churchill took up painting, creating over 500 paintings, typically working in plein air, though also practicing with still life and portraits. He claimed that painting helped him with his acute powers of observation and memory. Churchill himself was painted a portrait by renowned artist Graham Sutherland. The portrait was commissioned in 1954 by members of parliament to mark Churchill's 80th birthday. Through the 1930s, known as his wilderness years, Churchill focused on his writings, publishing a memoir and a biography of the first Duke of Marlborough. It was at this time that he began working on his celebrated A History of the English-Speaking Peoples, though it wouldn't be published for another 2 decades. On September 3, 1939, Britain declared war on Germany, and Churchill was again appointed First Lord of the Admiralty and a member of the War Cabinet. By April 1940, he became chairman of the Military Coordinating Committee. On May 10, 1940, King George VI appointed Churchill as Prime Minister and Minister of Defense in the place of obstinate Neville Chamberlain. Within hours, the German army started its western offensive, invading the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and in the space of 2 days entered France, leaving Britain to defend Europe. Churchill saw Britain through the World War II from 1940 to 1945 and led the country until Germany's surrender. As the war subsided, Churchill proposed plans for social reform in Britain but was unable to convince the public. Although he spearheaded Germany's surrender on May 7, 1945, Churchill was defeated in the general election in July 1945. 6 years after Churchill's defeat, he became the leader of the opposition party and continued to have an impact on world affairs. The general election in 1951 saw him emerge as Prime Minister for the second time. He also served as Minister of Defense between October 1951 and January 1952. Churchill's reign was punctuated with the enacting of reforms such as the Mines and Quarries Act of 1954, which improved working conditions in mines, and the Housing Repairs and Rent Act in 1955, which established standards for housing. In 1953, Queen Elizabeth II knighted Churchill. That same year, he was honored with the Nobel Peace Prize for Literature for his mastery of historical and biographical description, as well as for brilliant oratory in defending exalted human values, according to the Nobel Prize Committee. On January 24, 1965, Churchill died at the age of 90 in his London home 9 days after suffering a severe stroke. Britain mourned him for more than a week. Churchill left behind a great legacy. He was honored by his countrymen for defeating the dark regime of Hitler and the Nazi Party. He topped the list of greatest Britons of all time, and in 2002 BBC poll, outlasting other luminaries like Charles Darwin and William Shakespeare. Thank you very much for watching our videos. We'd like to give you another interesting video for you to enjoy next. But before then, our team would be very happy if you can like this video and share it with your friends on social media. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss other interesting videos like this one. Look at your screen now to see 2 other videos we handpicked for you to enjoy next. We love you.